For years, Novo Nordisk was what we would call a textbook pharmaceutical company. Solid profits, quiet leadership, and a very clear specialty, diabetes. But then, suddenly, came the big shift with the launch of two new drugs, Ozempic and Wegovy. What started out as a treatment to control blood sugar ended up becoming the biggest aesthetic, medical, and financial revolution of the last decade. Because these drugs didn't just treat diabetes, they also caused weight loss. And we're not talking about a couple of pounds. We're talking about 40 or 50 pounds in a matter of months. No scalpel, no surgery, no miracles, just science. The result? A real boom. Celebrities, influencers, investors, politicians, doctors. Suddenly, everyone wanted to try it. Google searches skyrocketed. Demand exceeded all forecasts. And all this while the fitness industry, cosmetic surgery, and nutrition clinics panicked. Novo Nordisk, on the other hand, skyrocketed. In 2024, this Danish pharmaceutical company was worth more on the stock market than giants such as Nestlé, ASML, LVMH, and SAP. It exceeded $550 billion in market capitalization and became the most valuable company in Europe. But since then, something has gone wrong. Shares have fallen 65% from their peak. It has lost nearly $350 billion in value, and its alliance with Hims & Hers Health Inc., one of the key factors to its widespread treatments in the US, has blown up amid allegations of patent misuse. So, what on earth has happened? How can a company that still boasts gross margins of 85%, operating margins of 48%, and has multiplied its profits by 25 times in just 2 decades, fall apart? Are we looking at a mere blip in a success story, or a structural shift? In this video, we're going to break it all down. How Novo Nordisk built its empire, what's behind the GLP-1 drug boom, why its alliance with Hims & Hers have blown up, and whether this 65% drop is a historic opportunity or a textbook trap. Because this isn't just about losing weight. It's about a company that has rewritten modern science, and now has to prove that it can also survive its own expectations. Let's get started.
From sugar to vanity.
Let's take a trip back in time. The year is 2000. Back then, if anyone talked about type 2 diabetes, it was with resignation. It was a silent, growing, almost epidemic disease, but one that no one seemed to pay attention to. Big Pharma didn't consider it a sexy market and ignored it. All of them except one. Novo Nordisk thought differently. While the giants of the industry were betting on cancer cures, antivirals, and oncological treatments, this Danish company bet everything on a single card: insulin. Why? Because they knew that if the world was going to change, if poor diet, sedentary lifestyles, and aging continued, this forgotten disease would become one of the great health battles of the 21st century. And they were right. Completely right. These days, Novo Nordisk controls more than 30% of the global insulin market. In some segments, such as long-acting insulin, its share is even higher. And its products not only save lives, they generate billions in profits. Because we're not talking about generic or cheap drugs. We're talking about advanced treatments that are difficult to replicate, combining high technology, sophisticated chemistry, and years of research. But that's not the most shocking thing. What really catapulted Novo Nordisk wasn't just its treatment of diabetes, it was discovering that those same drugs could revolutionize another much larger market: weight loss. Yes, you heard correctly. In 2017, Novo Nordisk launched Ozempic, a new diabetes treatment based on semaglutide. The results were spectacular. It controlled glucose levels, reduced cardiovascular risk, and had one side effect that didn't go unnoticed. It causes weight loss, and significant weight loss. And can you guess what happened? The world quickly caught on. Ozempic quickly became a global phenomenon, not only among diabetes patients, but also among healthy people who simply want to lose weight. Influencers, celebrities, executives, actors, everyone is talking about the magic injection. The hashtag Ozempic exploded on social media. Memes, reports, and jokes began to appear on primetime TV shows. The drug jumped from pharmaceutical anonymity to the very heart of pop culture, and Novo Nordisk didn't rest on its laurels. In 2021, it launched Wegovy, a version specifically designed for weight loss. The FDA The US Drug Authority gave it the green light, and the clinical trials were a bombshell. Obese patients lost up to 15% of their body weight, a real turning point in the fight against obesity. A quantum leap from any previous treatment. The result? Wegovy took off. Sales multiplied. Demand was so high that Novo ran out of production capacity. Literally, shortages emerged in dozens of countries. In Germany, the United Kingdom, and France, restrictions were imposed to prevent collapse. Patients queued up. Clinics ran out of stock. Pharmacies imposed waiting lists. And meanwhile, the company's figures skyrocketed. Between 2020 and 2024, Novo's revenue rose from $19 billion to over $40 billion in just 4 years. Gross margins hit 85%, the highest level in its history. Operating margins shot up to 48%, more than double the 2002 figure. And with all this growth, naturally, net profits exploded. In the last 2 decades, they have multiplied by 25%. Yeah, you heard correctly, 25 times. In 2024, Novo Nordisk earned just over $14 billion after taxes. It's a case study. One of the best returns the pharmaceutical industry has seen in a century. The problem, just when it seemed that Novo had reached its peak, things started to go wrong. Because naturally, success comes at a price. First came the supply problems. Then a big debate arose. Is it ethical to prescribe a weight loss drug to people with no previous medical conditions? Then came regulatory tensions, and some countries began to place limits on prescribing drugs lightly. And finally, competition arrived. Because while Novo was sweeping the market with semaglutide, a silent rival was preparing its counter-offensive, Eli Lilly, the big American pharmaceutical company. Lilly had been researching similar molecules for years, and in 2023, it launched Mounjaro, followed shortly after by Zepbound, 2 drugs that not only mimic the effect of Ozempic, but in some trials, even surpass it. The press dubbed them the Ozempic killers, and doctors have begun prescribing them en masse. To make matters worse, Lilly plays hardball, is aggressive on pricing, and, as you would expect, has better access to the US market. After all, it is an American pharmaceutical company, it's playing on home turf. The result? Eli Lilly began to eat into Novo Nordisk's market share. This was particularly true in the US, the heart of the global weight loss business. And do you know what happened next? The market took notice. And suddenly, as if someone had shouted, "Bubble!" in the middle of a party, Novo Nordisk began to plummet on the stock market. From its June 2024 highs to today, shares have fallen more than 60%. That's more than half of its market value. Gone. Vanished. It's taken a brutal pounding. And do you know what's crazy? The projections are still reasonably good. Analysts expect Novo's revenue to continue growing at 11% annually through 2029, with earnings per share, EPS, skyrocketing at a rate of 14% annually. And keep an eye on this. The sharp decline has caused the company to trade below 15 times its estimated earnings for 2025. In other words, it's much cheaper than before. And perhaps that could make it more profitable than ever. But of course, only if it manages to maintain its position. And trust me, that if changes everything. Because the weight loss market has gone wild. Competition is fierce. The rules change every few minutes. And what was once a pharmaceutical monopoly is now an open war for the body and mind of the consumer. Just ask him and hers. Stay tuned.
The insulin empire that lost the trust of the market.
April 2025, Novo Nordisk surprises everyone with an unexpected alliance. For the first time, they are partnering with Hims & Hers, an American digital health startup that has been killing it in recent years with a very simple model: online medical consultations, quick prescriptions, and home delivery. Hims & Hers has grown rapidly by selling treatments for all kinds of problems, such as anxiety, erectile dysfunction, and hair loss. But what really catapulted them to success was their commitment to teleprescribing weight loss medications. And here's where Novo saw a great opportunity. Instead of fighting this model, it decided to embrace it. It gave Hims part of the distribution of Wegovy. The idea was clear: to reach millions of patients who had never before considered treating their weight with drugs. It was a pragmatic agreement, an alliance to accelerate and scale up, and also a counterattack against the growing threat from Eli Lilly, its major competitor in this new market. It seemed like a masterstroke, but it ended up blowing up in their faces. On the 23rd of June 2025, Novo Nordisk announced the immediate end of its collaboration with Hims & Hers, and it did so by dropping a bombshell. It accused the startup of misleading advertising, of promoting Wegovy for purposes not approved by the FDA or by Novo itself. Even more seriously, they accused it of selling counterfeit drugs made with illegal active ingredients bought in from abroad. Boom. The last straw was an advertising campaign launched by Hims & Hers. In it, they presented Wegovy as a quick, easy, and hassle-free solution for weight loss. They did so without nuance, without explaining what type of patients it was intended for, without warning about possible side effects, and omitting how important it is to seek medical supervision. Basically, they were selling the drug as if it were a lifestyle product, as if it were an energy bar or a facial serum, not a clinical treatment. And not surprisingly, for a pharmaceutical company like Novo, which has been fighting for scientific rigor and medical credibility for decades, this was simply unacceptable, as was the risk of lawsuits that this type of advertising could bring. And so, the official statement was brief, but lethal. Novo accused Hims of violating the terms of the agreement, of jeopardizing the reputation of its flagship drug, and it put a statement on the table that said it all. Take a look.
Hims has promoted Wegovy in a manner that may mislead consumers about its approval, use, and effects.
Coming from a publicly traded pharmaceutical company, this statement is practically a death sentence. The result? Hims' shares plummeted 35% in a single day, and Novo seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. For the first time in a long time, Novo Nordisk regained control over something crucial: distribution. The breakup was not just a reputational blow to Hims, it also seemed to mark a turning point for Novo, which had been bleeding on the stock market for over a year, but it was only temporary. After presenting its second quarter results, the company has plummeted again, and it's done so mainly because its results in the United States are poor. Competition is fierce. But that's not all. There are also other factors that have weighed heavily. First, regulatory uncertainty. Health authorities in both Europe and the United States began to scrutinize the boom in GLP-1 drugs such as Ozempic and Wegovy. This is because, in a very short time, prescriptions for weight loss skyrocketed, and the boom in weight loss drugs did not come alone. It also raised questions, many questions. Is this medication safe in the long term? What happens if it is consumed without clinical obesity? Can they be prescribed without face-to-face medical supervision? Do their benefits outweigh the risks they may entail? It's an open debate. The second problem was operational fatigue. Demand was so brutal that Novo couldn't keep up. Literally, there wasn't enough product to supply all countries, and that created a perfect storm of discontent. Patients who couldn't find their treatments, frustrated pharmacists, regulators pushing, and that created a fast lane for competitors like Eli Lilly to gain ground at record speed. And then there's a third reason, less visible but equally important: excessive valuation. You see, in mid-2024, Novo Nordisk was trading at extremely high multiples, more than 30 times its estimated earnings. It was, on its own merits, the most valuable company in Europe, surpassing even LVMH and Nestlé. But, of course, on the stock market, the higher you climb, the more that is expected of you. And any misstep, no matter how small, is punished twice as hard. The result? You've seen it. 12 months of uninterrupted correction. Now, following this tsunami, the question is, where is Novo Nordisk today? Well, actually, in a much stronger place than it seems. Because despite everything, if there's one thing that hasn't changed, it's the fundamentals of the business. In 2024, Novo Nordisk had revenues of over $40 billion, compared to the $3.5 billion it had in 2002. That's a huge jump. But the most impressive thing isn't how much it has grown, it's how it has grown. As we saw earlier, its gross margins have risen from 73% to 85%, and its operating margins are now 48%, double what they were 20 years ago. In other words, not only are they selling more, but they're doing so much more profitably. And in the world of pharmaceuticals, where development costs and regulatory pressure are constant, that is quite a feat. But wait, there's more. Its net profits have increased 25-fold since 2002 because Novo has built a diversified platform with drugs for diabetes, obesity, rare diseases, and a promising and expanding research pipeline. What's more, its financial discipline is exemplary. They pay increasing dividends, buy back shares, and have virtually no debt. This is in stark contrast to many emerging biotech companies, which need rounds of financing every 2 years. And if all this were not enough, the future estimates remain very solid. As we said before, market analysts expect Novo to grow at an annual rate of 11% in revenue through 2029, with earnings per share increasing at an even faster rate of 14% per year. And all this while trading at a multiple of just 16 times its earnings in 2025. The question is this an opportunity? Well, logically, this will depend on what you believe about the future of this new weight control medicine. But keep one thing in mind, beyond the fads, the headlines, or the influencers showing off their weekly injections, the change is real. More and more countries are recognizing obesity as a chronic disease, and that changes everything. It opens the door to public reimbursement, long-term treatments, and a simply fierce market expansion. And in this scenario, Novo Nordisk remains the leader. It has the best margin, it's the most recognized brand, and it has the trust of the medical community. In GLP-1 treatments, this pharmaceutical company still has over 50% of the market share in the United States and 70% in the international market outside the US. That has not changed. In fact, its global market share has not declined, but has actually grown over the last 2 years. The thing is, as with any revolution, there is noise, there is competition, and there are doubts. But if any company has proven it has the muscle, culture, and discipline to navigate turbulent waters, it's Novo Nordisk. Yes, it has stumbled. Yes, it has lost $250 billion in market capitalization in a year. It has faced shortages, fierce competition, regulatory controversies, and broken alliances. But guess what? It continues to lead a market that is booming. This clearly opens up a huge potential market that is still virtually untouched. In fact, the market is largely untouched because the global penetration rate is estimated to be less than 1%. But that's not all. This company also continues to generate profits like few other companies in Europe, and now it is trading, for the first time in years, at reasonable multiples. Multiples that do not discount perfection, and for many experts, that is exactly when the opportunities begin. The weight management market is not a passing fad. It is a healthcare, cultural, and economic megatrend, and Novo Nordisk, despite all the recent headlines, remains the most experienced, industrially powerful, and scientifically credible player in the sector. And clearly, its drug portfolio and pipeline go far beyond that. In this video, we focused a lot on weight loss, but there are more and more drugs on the way. So, is this story foolproof? Of course not. It's not, as is never the case in markets, a sure bet. It's an asymmetric bet. Novo's future does not depend solely on Wegovy or Ozempic. It depends on how it manages its production, how it protects its reputation, its pipeline, and its competition with Lilly. It depends on how it manages to take the next leap. Combination drugs, new molecules, universal access. Clearly, the story of Novo Nordisk is far from over. Whatever the case, the questions are now over to you. How do you view its stock market crash? As an opportunity or a threat? How far do you think these types of drugs will go? Is this the end of a bubble or the beginning of a new golden decade for the company that slimmed down the world? Leave us your opinions in the comments. We always read them. And if you found this video interesting, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Thank you so very much for being there. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.